The Hurricanes are officially back for game 2 of the first round against the New Jersey Devils. After beating them on Sunday 4-1, the Hurricanes look to take this series 2-0 back to New Jersey for game 3 on Friday. That being said, can they carry the momentum into that game? And who's going to be stepping up for them in a big way to come out on top?
Your Locked On Hurricanes, your daily podcast on the Carolina Hurricanes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to a Tuesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you to the everydayer for making this your first listen of the day. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, talking everything about your Carolina Hurricanes. I'm your host, Zach Martin. I'm the credentialed Carolina Hurricanes beat writer over at the Hawkers, also the host of the Surgecast, which is a weekly Carolina Hurricanes podcast, along with all my duties here at Locked On Hurricanes. Got a fun Tuesday episode for you guys as we get to preview Game 2 of the first round between your Carolina Hurricanes and the New Jersey Devils. Who are the players to watch, and what are going to be the keys to this game for the Hurricanes to take this series 2-0 back to New Jersey? Now, as we all know, game 1 was on Sunday. Hurricanes won at 4-1. They're up 1-0 in the series. Thankfully, it's not so early like it was on Sunday, where it was a 3 p.m. start, but this one still is a weird start time compared to what we're usually used to in the regular season. This is a 6 p.m. start on Tuesday, and it's going to be on FanDuel Sports Network South once again, and also on ESPN. Now, we all know series 4-1 in favor of the Carolina Hurricanes. Game 2 is on, today at 6. Then it's going to be on Friday the 25th at 8, followed up by the 27th at 3:30 p.m. So another weird late start time later this week. And then, of course, another afternoon game for Game 4 back in New Jersey. Now, who are the players, that are kind of leading the way in terms of points, goals, and assists? Well, no surprise for the Devils. They only got one goal. Jesper Bratt with the assist, Nico Hischier with the goal. For the Carolina Hurricanes, how about Logan Stankoven? 2 goals, is tied in the team with points with 2, and that's because Taylor Hall got 2 assists. Now, looking at the tail of the tape, how are we looking compared to the New Jersey Devils? Of course, all the stats are pretty much the same, from game 1, but just taking a quick look at it for a refresher. Power play, 33.3% for the Carolina Hurricanes, which of all the playoff teams, even though some haven't really played yet, they're 4th. New Jersey with a 0 are 8th. In terms of the penalty kill, 100% for the Hurricanes. And the penalty kill for New Jersey is actually 6 out of 6 at 6.7%. Face-offs, Hurricanes 93.4 compared to New Jersey's 60.6. Goals for, Hurricanes are 4th at 4 goals per game, while New Jersey's 9th at 1. And then goals allowed, obviously Carolina's 1st, only giving them 1 goal. New Jersey is 6th with over a 4. Now, the real question coming into this game is, who are the goaltenders going to be? Because, game 1, we know is Jacob Markstrom, 3.01 goals against, and .932 save percentage. Will they go back to him again? Probably, since he's been their guy all regular season. I don't see why they would go to Jake Allen in this game. Now, if they go down 2-0, maybe you start looking at a possibility of maybe Allen goes in, but even then, there's still a long stretch between Tuesday the 22nd until Friday the 25th. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. For the Hurricanes, now I know at practice on Monday, Frederik Andersen was in the net in terms of the quote-unquote starters crease, but don't ever really look into something like that because it's practice, it's an off day. It doesn't usually tend to on those days of who's going to be starting in net. Of course, they asked Rod after practice, hey, what's your goaltending situation look like? He said, I know what it is, but we're not really going to reveal it just yet. So it's not really for sure who's going to be in it, but if it's going to be Frederik Andersen, I would not be surprised since he's 1-0 with a 1 goal against and a .958 save percentage. After a game he just had for game 1, it wouldn't really be a surprise to go with Frederik Andersen, But if they feel like they want to go with this on-off again, like we saw in the regular season, especially with 3 days in between game 2 and game 3, I could see them go with Pierre Kochetkov too, to at least give Freddie more days off to get ready for the Friday game. But if they feel like Anderson is the guy for them in game 2, then most likely they're going to go for him in game 2. Now, like I said, there was practice on Monday. The lines for this were obviously Jarvis, Aho, Blake. Then they had Tyson Jost with Kotkaniemi and Svechnikov, Marnik, Stahl, and Stankoven. And then it was Carrier, Roslovic, Robinson with Jankowski as the extra forward. Defense, Slavin, Burns, Orloff, Chatfield, Gotchesbear, Walker, and the extra D pair of Nikishin and Stillman. Goaltenders, Anderson and Kochetkov, and Kasayev. So, like I said, don't pay attention to the goaltenders in the starting crease. It is what it is. Plus, like I said, Kasayev is their third netminder just to help out for the playoff run. And obviously, right now, Nikishin's the healthy extra with Stillman and Jankowski is the extra forward, but there could be an interesting piece to, does he draw in for game 2 or do you keep the lines the same? Jost is only in for Taylor Hall because it says for precautionary reasons. Don't know what kind of precautionary reasons that could be, but that's why you see Jost as the second line left winger on that Hall Svechnikov line. I wouldn't really read too much into it. It was, I think, is the fact that you saw the hit that he took from Daniel Sprong very late into the game on Sunday, right in front of the, open door of the bench. I don't know if you tweak something or maybe just, hit something at a weird angle, but they're just making sure that he's okay. I don't think it's anything too serious. I think it's just a precaution to make sure that he's all right. But definitely a scary moment with 2 seconds left where you got, Sprong throwing a very late hit that was very unnecessary that also almost started a fight. But unless told otherwise, I would not be surprised. I would not suspect that you wouldn't see Hall, so I would expect him to be in for a game 2 unless told otherwise. So that's the reason why Jost is there. The only real question is, do you go to Jankowski for game 2, or do you keep it the same and keep Roslovic as the center? The only thing I can think of why they maybe don't go with, Roslovic as the center, because the Hurricanes only won 39% of their faceoffs. And you're looking at a guy like Jankowski. He does win a lot of faceoffs. You definitely need a guy in there to do that. It's just, if you take Roslovic out, because Roslovic has 22 goals for the Hurricanes, if you take him out of the center position, do you leave him out of the lineup entirely, or do you take someone else out? And that goes into the question of, who do you take out, though? Do you take out Robinson? Can't do that because Robinson has got the speed and he plays a really good game. Carrier, a physical presence. I don't know where that goes. So could this be just a Roslovic out, Jankowski in type of situation, or does Rod go with the same lineup? So that's kind of the main question of where you go from there. So it should be very interesting to see how the lines play out in terms of who's going to be in and who's going to be out for that. Of course, we won't really know for sure since there is no morning skate on Tuesday for the Carolina Hurricanes. There will be some media availability after that. So it'll be interesting to see what Rod says after that meeting on Tuesday morning. And of course, when we get closer to puck drop at 6, maybe we'll get a better idea of who's going to be doing what in terms of lines and getting everything ready like that. So it should be interesting to keep an eye on, but not really sure how that's going to play out. But like I said, unless something is set otherwise, don't worry about Hall not being in the practice lineup with Jost in. And like I said, now the question is it Jankowski or is it Roslovic? Of course, defense, I don't think the defense is going to change very much. Yeah, you're going to give Nikishin a little bit of an extra practice, but I doubt he's going to come in for game 2, maybe later in the series or maybe somewhere else in the playoffs. Who knows? Because you got to give him some time to get used to acclimating to North American ice. It's his first time over here. So who knows? We'll see him in. And goaltending, like I said, don't look at an off day practice as, oh, this is the goalie, because you never know. It could be Kochetkov to keep, the back and forth going, to keep guys fresh, especially with 3 days after the game on Tuesday, or they could go back with Anderson again because he had a really great game 1. Why not go back to the hot hand that helped you get that win? So it definitely should be interesting. Now, outside of goalie matchups, outside of the tails of the tape, who are the players to watch for the Devils and, of course, the Carolina Hurricanes? Well, stick around as we'll talk about that here in a second on a Tuesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crackin a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. Get snacking and get cracking with a snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Welcome back to segment 2 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. Now, we talk about the tail of the tape. We talk about who's leading the team in points, goals, assists, and all that. Possible goalie matchups, but who are the players to watch in this game for game 2? And right now, I think the obvious suspects, Nico Hischier, he did score that goal for the Devils, his only one of the game, did have 3 shots, 3 blocks, played over 20 minutes of that game, but he did finish the -1. How does the captain of the Devils bounce back after, while he did score, that was pretty much it for the Devils. How is he going to help lead this team in their aspect to get back into the series? And that's someone the Hurricanes need to watch. Jesper Bratt did get the assist. How do you look at him too? I would even say if you're looking at someone else to, keep an eye on and make things very interesting is, Luke Hughes, because he did miss some time, but he did come back. But, is he going to be 100% ready to go? Because if they're down Hughes as well, they're down a bunch of guys because they lost Brendan Dillon. He only played 8 minutes and 53 seconds. He got hurt. They were down to 5D man. Even at one point, they lost Hughes, and Hughes still played over 22 minutes of that game, but he was out for a good bit. What does that happen for there? And then, of course, Cody Glass. Is Cody Glass going to be available? Because he got knocked out of the game pretty early because of Jacob Markstrom trying to slash Svechnikov, instead got him in the wrist. Is Glass out? If he's out, then who are they going to draw in out of McDermott, Foote, Lazar, all of that? And then if defense, if you're down Dillon, who do you bring in? Do you bring Nemec? Do you bring in Casey? Like how does that work out? And if Luke Hughes is 100%, what happens in that case? So are you going to be down all these extra guys? So that should be interesting how that works out. So if Hughes is in, maybe keep an eye on and see what he does. But of course, like I said, you got Brock, you got Heath, for those guys who kind of mainly did most of the work for New Jersey in that game. They both had 3 shots. The other guys who had multiple shots was Bastian, Meyer, and Dowling. But even then, not really a whole lot to talk home about. Now for the Hurricanes, obviously you're looking out for the line of Hall. I wouldn't say it's like 3 guys. I think it's just an entire line for the Hurricanes for this first part of who to keep an eye on for the players. You definitely got to look at the Hall, Kotkaniemi, and Svechnikov line. If you look at the natural stat trick from last game, shots for, they were 10-3, had so much more compared to that. And even like chances for and against, it was like 19-5. It was the biggest margin of the fact you look at the Corsi of 75% for that line compared to New Jersey. And they played over 9 minutes together of 5-on-5 hockey. But that's something that really benefited them, was the fact that they had the most chances created, most shots created as well. Gave a very, like, in terms of the chances for and against, they were the only line above 500, and they were way above that because everyone else was like 5 for 5, 4 for 4, 3 for 3. But these guys were like 19-5 overall. And like I said, even shots for and the chances created, 10-3 in chances created against them, putting them at a really high rate. So it shows that if this line is still rolling for the Hurricanes, that's something that's really going to be beneficial, because the Hurricanes are probably one of the deepest teams in the playoffs right now. And that's a good thing to have if you're Rod Brind'Amour, because now you even have, like, with your forward core, you still got Jankowski and Jost as your extras. Like, this is probably the most healthiest Hurricanes team we have going in the playoffs over the last couple of seasons. And the fact that you got that Hall, Kotkaniemi, and Svechnikov line playing so well together, I don't know how you don't keep that as, a line to keep an eye on, because if that helps out, then you're bringing a nice balance in between your top line of Aho, Jarvis, and Blake, who are a little bit on the short, like they're, around 5'10" to 6 foot, but they all got speed. They're crafty. They can make plays together. But then you look at the third line of the Jordans with Stankoven. You got 2 really big guys, and you do have Stankoven, who's 5'8", who's not afraid to play above his height. But then you have that second line of those three of Hall, Kotkaniemi, and Svechnikov, where they give you that nice balance of speed, not afraid to throw the body, really ready to create chances and all that stuff. So you got like that creativity of that first line mixed in with that third line of throwing bodies. That's what kind of like your second line is. You got a defensive two-way center in Kotkaniemi. You got the crafty playmaker that is, Taylor Hall, who can, score goals, but also set up teammates as well, and also going to throw bodies as well. Then you got the power forward that's Andrei Svechnikov. He can score. He can throw bodies. He can be physical. He needs to be, and even create chances as well. So you have that nice mix of that second line. They could do what the first line does and what the third line does as well. So the chances they created, it's definitely one to keep an eye on. Now, in terms of another guy to watch, if it is going to be the goaltending once again of Frederick Anderson, keep an eye out for him. Had a really great game one, a .958 save percentage, only gave up one goal the entire game, and that was on a shot that you have to give Nico Hischier some credit for. It was far side, nothing you do about that. But looking at the defense, how about the fact that you had Jalen Sheffield and Dmitry Orlov both finishing with a +5? Now, I know they did give up an opportunity to the Devils where Anderson had to bail them out, but overall, not a bad night for those guys. A combined +5, you will definitely take that. Like I said, Sheffield scored a goal, so you'll definitely have that. Yeah, while Orlov did have one shot, he did have 2 blocks and threw 4 hits, so he was not afraid to get in front of pucks and throw bodies as well. And even Sean Walker led the team in shots with 4 on the defense side of things, and threw 3 hits. So Walker was pretty much doing his two-way game that he's kind of built himself into with the Hurricanes, along with Shane Gostisbehere. Like I said, led the defensive shots with 4. He also threw, like I said, 3 hits. The only guy to beat him in hits was Orlov. So you're seeing where on the defensive side of things, Walker's not afraid to shoot the puck. Like he tied guys like Stankoven, Robinson, and Kotkaniemi, all who had 4 shots. Like I said, his 3 hits, that's pretty impressive. That's compared to guys like, with Martinook who had 3. Eric Robinson had 8 hits, which is insane to think about. Jarvis had 5. Carey, he had 6. So Sean Walker's in there again. I want to keep an eye on who's got that good offensive mindset, but is not also afraid to throw hits and be physical when he needs to as well. So just across the board, there's so many guys you can go with for the Hurricanes to keep an eye on. Like I said, you got Jarvis, who's throwing a lot of hits. The hit he threw on Pesce was fantastic. Absolutely clean, perfect body to body. That was a tone setter for this game. Like I said, you look at Robinson, who's throwing a lot of hits, but he had some shot opportunities too. Robinson is definitely fitting well with this system. Like, I hope the Hurricanes can bring back Robinson because he's someone that could be very huge for the team next year as a guy you could throw into the top 6 if you need to, or you can throw him in the top 9 or keep him on that 4th line. But you're adding speed to that 4th line, which is crazy to think about. And plus, you're bringing Jankowski back next year. Imagine Jankowski Robinson together on that 4th line, and maybe if they keep Carey down there too, because he's under contract for the next 5 seasons. So let's say they want to throw Stankoven in that 3rd line again with the Jordans. You have a 4th line of Carey, Jankowski, and Robinson going into next season too. So that's phenomenal to have. So the way Robinson's playing right now in the playoffs, even after game 1, it's setting himself up to be like, hey, I want to stay in Carolina. I know I can play well here, and it's obvious that he can play well in Carolina. So that's another guy. Like I said, there's so many guys you can pick from this lineup that had such a great game 1 that actually be like, I'm going to keep my eye on this guy. What's he going to do? Like I said, Jackson Blake did his thing. Seth Jarvis, the Jordans. Look at Stankoven scored 2 goals for the Hurricanes in his debut. Like, it's just a bag of riches for the Hurricanes right now in terms of who you can look on the ice. Defensively, you got Slavin on Hischier and Brott shutting those guys down for the most part. And the only reason why Hischier scored because it was a 4-on-4 and a penalty to Shane Gostisbehere for him, but that's the only reason why they scored because there was one less guy on the ice on both teams. Other than that, they were shut down because of just the good defensive structural prowess the Hurricanes have. That being said, is that one of the keys to the Hurricanes win game 2? Well, stick around as I will give you my keys to the game for the Hurricanes to beat New Jersey in game 2. We'll do that here in a second on a Tuesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. The NBA playoffs are almost here. Well, they're actually here, but more importantly, the NHL playoffs are here. And FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. Welcome back to segment 3 of Locked on Hurricanes, your team every day. So we kind of previewed game 2, looking at goaltending matchups, tails of the tape, stuff like that. And we also talk about players to watch. Like I said, for the Hurricanes, you could pretty much talk about the entire lineup just because of how good they were in game 1. So what are the keys to the game for the Hurricanes? Well, obviously the first one we got to talk about. Like I said, I know it's cliche. I talk about it a lot during the regular season, but like I said, for what you need to do in the playoffs, you need to win on the road. Of course, the Hurricanes haven't been on the road yet because it's only game 2 and they have home ice advantage. But the other one was control the special teams, more so the power play. But that kind of turned into, when I wrote my article for the Hockey Writers, if you haven't checked it out yet, hockeywriters.com, go check out my 3 keys to the Hurricanes defeating the New Jersey Devils in round 1. And one of them which was number 1, take care of the special teams. And that's what they did. They limited their penalties to the Devils. Only got 2, and one of them, like I said, was a phantom embellishment to Shane Gostisbehere. But other than that, they had 1 true penalty the whole game. That's talk about limiting New Jersey, because New Jersey came in with the 3rd best power play in the entire NHL, and they shut them down 2 out of 2 times, which technically was 1 out of 1 because one of them was on a 4-on-4. So really, the PK went 1 for 1 on the night. Other than that, they did a fantastic job. Other than that, they had 3 power play opportunities, and they scored 1. That's what you need. If you get at least 1 power play goal per game, or when you get the opportunity to have one, if you at least score 1 in that game, then you're setting yourself up to be in a better place. So that's a great start for the power play. You're 1 for 3. You're at 33.3333% as it goes on forever. But at least you're setting yourself up to, even when you're going up against a team who's second on the PK, third on the power play, but you beat them in both facets of that matchup, that puts you in a good spot to where even if you play your game of a 5-on-5 hockey for the Canes, at least controlling special teams, shutting them down on your PK and scoring your opportunities, it will go a long way for the Hurricanes. So if they can keep this up to where if they limit the penalties, because the Devils out-hit them by a lot, but the Hurricanes, all their hits were at the right time and weren't drawing penalties. So if they can find a way to keep playing their game of, we're going to throw hits, but we're going to do it in a way where we're not going to get penalized for it, and limit our PK of being on the ice, and basically dictating the pace of keeping this 5-on-5, then the Hurricanes are going to be in a fantastic spot. So this is where, do what you did on special teams in game 1 and translate that to game 2. Limit New Jersey's power play opportunities, and when you get the chance to go on the man advantage, take advantage of it and at least get 1. At least you'll put yourself into a good spot and hopefully keep your power play going. So that should be very interesting to see how that works out. And then going into my second point of, you played your entire game perfectly in game 1. Did you have a couple lapses? Yeah, because you were trying to pass the puck around the back with Chatfield and Orloff. But other than that, I don't really think there was anything else wrong with the Hurricanes of how they played their game. They forechecked them to death, which is just overwhelms teams in enough time. And they shot the absolute lights out of the building. I mean, you outshot them by over 20. He had 20 more shots than they did. And you were absolutely throttling them. Like you outshot them 17-8 in the second period alone. And that's after going 17-5 in the first. Like, if you can forecheck them to into oblivion and keep putting pressure on that all game, that you're going to make Markstrom work. And if you keep him working with going side to side, shots high, shots low, just putting shots on net, but like the quality chances were there. It wasn't just like every shot was going to the chest. No, you're hitting posts, off of sticks, multiple rebounds are going off of pads, but at least they were making an opportunity to. They had the green light. They were shooting at will. So if you keep playing your game where you forecheck them like crazy, bombard Markstrom with all these shots and keep New Jersey on their toes, I don't see why you don't do that again. Plus, the structured defense was just fantastic. You didn't let them get very many opportunities. Like I said, you gave them like 13 shots in 2 periods, and they had 11 in the third to get basically half of what their shots were. But if you limit them once again to very limited amount of chances, and most of them were out to the perimeter, then you're setting yourself up perfectly, which leads into your offensive forechecking them and giving yourself more ozone time. So if you stick to your structured game, that what you did in game 1 for game 2, I don't see why you don't take game 2 and take this thing back to New Jersey up 2-0 around 1. And my third point is, Jalen Sheffield scores 2 minutes and 30 seconds into the game, and the place was rocking when the siren was going off. But that first goal really got the crowd going. Then you got the second. Then you got the third with Stanko and both of his goals. Like I said, I'm surprised the roof was even on the place. That's how loud it was. But this is where you give yourself a perfect opportunity to, if you get out early again, start 60 minutes of Hurricanes hockey and get Lenovo Center rocking once again like you did in game 1. That is going to be a big factor for this series. I think that's what's really going to rattle the Devils, because of the fact that you're going into a hostile environment like Lenovo Center, where it's already loud in the regular season to begin with, but then you up it to another level with playoff hockey in Carolina. That's going to overwhelm so many guys. And that's where you see, it's like you hear Sheldon Keefe saying, well, it's easy to game plan because you know what Carolina's going to do, but it's hard to do it because the Hurricanes will bombard you. They will make it a hard time for you. Plus, the arena is very tough to play in. That's why the Hurricanes won 31 home games. They make it really hard to play there, and that's because you get the fans behind you. So if you start out early, throwing hits, they're not going to get you in trouble, which you did in game 1. You get scoring early. It doesn't have to be 2.5 minutes in, but as long as you get the first goal to really get the crowd going and get that momentum going, then I think you're really going to put the Devils on their heels. Because, okay, now you're already down 1-0. Now you get the crowd going. The place is loud. You can't hear yourself think. Talking is going to be tough. So this is where you're putting yourself in a good spot again. Of if you just get going early like you did in game 1 for game 2, that's just going to absolutely rattle the Devils and put them in a tough spot. So if you get that building going early, that's going to give you the momentum to carry through into this game to go get that win. So keys of the game for the Hurricanes: continue to control the special teams battle. You did it for game 1. You went 1 for 3 on the power play, 2 for 2 on the PK, technically 1 for 1 because one was a 4-on-4. You do that, you're in a good spot. If you stick to your game, you're going to be fine, because you saw what happened in game 1 where you stuck to your game of forechecking, great transitional play, structured defense. That will go a long way as well. And then point 3, 60 minutes of hockey, score early, get that building going right from the rip, and you're going to be fine, because you're going to put the pressure on the Devils to where doubt creeps in, and that's where the let up starts on their side, and then you just keep bombarding them with shot after shot, hit after hit, and just score as many goals as you can to get that place rocking to where it just neutralizes the Devils. That's what you need to do to pick up your second win in game 2 of round 1. So it should definitely be an interesting night on Tuesday, where the Hurricanes look to head to New Jersey up 2-0, if and hopefully when they win game 2 at Lenovo Center on Tuesday night. Well, guys, that will be the Tuesday episode of Locked On Hurricanes. Thank you for making your first listen today. For your second listen, or just check out Locked On NHL Game Night. Every game, every night until a Stanley Cup champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find NHL Game Night on Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to the podcast. If you want to keep it with me, I'm at OneTrueZach on X. The podcast is LO_Hurricanes. I'm also on Blue Sky at Zachary Martin, where you can check out all of my links, especially if you want to check out my Carolina Hurricanes written content over at thehockeywriters.com. If you want to check out my other podcasts, well, it's the Surgecast and all podcast platforms and on YouTube. For Locked On Hurricanes, Spotify, Google, Apple, iHeartRadio. Follow, subscribe, leave a 5-star rating and review, because I might just read it on the show. For YouTube, well, it's Locked On Hurricanes. Subscribe, hit the bell notification so you don't miss a show. Hit the thumbs up to let me know if you like the show as well. Share with all other Keniacs to become everydayers just like you. But I hope everyone enjoyed the Tuesday episode of Locked On Hurricanes. Enjoy your Tuesday and have fun on Tuesday night watching your Carolina Hurricanes take on the New Jersey Devils in Game 2 of Round 1. And until next time, as always, let's go Canes.